Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
As some of you guessed through social media yesterday, our very special guest today will be New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu. We'll do a full introduction when he joins us here in studio in just a moment. But Jim, I have to say your Naked Gun 2.5 clue yesterday really seemed to be the linchpin to people figuring this out.
Yeah, I didn't think I was giving it away. And thankfully, no one said, oh, my God, you guys are going to have O.J. Simpson on the show. But yeah, so there was a reference to his father, John Sununu, who was then, at that point, the recently departed chief of staff for George H.W. Bush, departed as in dismissed from his job for using the helicopter too much, not for, being departed from this earth, thankfully. And so he was in it. And, obviously Frank Drebin was running around the White House making his usual chaos. But that was the reference when I said the surname of our guest had been on there. And oh, by the way, I am a big Governor John Sununu fan, so he can take the helicopter anywhere he wants, as far as I'm concerned.
Chris Sununu, as you'll soon find out, is a fun guy too, and a lot of energy, a lot of good discussion coming up here on a lot of important topics. But before we get to the governor, of course, got to do a little business here, because you don't have to choose anymore between better hair growth and your health. There's a holistic solution for men that promotes both healthier hair and whole body wellness. So get ahead of that thinning hair with Nutrafol's whole body approach to hair growth. No drugs and no compromises.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth nutraceuticals go beyond genetics to multi-target the root causes of thinning hair, including stress, hormones, nutrition, metabolism, aging, and lifestyle through whole body health. Physician formulated using natural medical-grade ingredients, Nutrafol's drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results. In a clinical study, men showed progressive improvement in hair growth and thickness after 3 months and 6 months. And remember, Nutrafol is trusted and recommended by more than 3,000 top doctors.
Very good, Jim. Nutraceuticals. That's quite the word. You can grow thicker and healthier hair and support the Three Martini Lunch by going to Nutrafol.com/men and entering the promo code Martini to save $15 off your first month subscription. This is their best offer anywhere, and it's only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. Plus, you get free shipping on every order. So get $15 off at Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, promo code Martini. And now we are pleased to welcome to the Three Martini Lunch, three-term New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. Governor Sununu is in his 6th year as governor and running for a 4th two-year term this year. Governor, thanks for coming in studio with us.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come into a room in Washington, D.C. that's actually quite pleasant for a change. There's smiles and laughter and positivity. Walk outside these walls, it's a little different, but this is great.
Well, it's great to have you in the nation's capital. As you know, a lot of Republicans were hoping you'd come to town, just not right now, although they'd be fine with that too, but also next January as the next senator from New Hampshire. You were very high on the candidate recruitment list for the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Ultimately, you decided not to do that. So why'd you decide to try to keep your current job instead of helping the Republicans take back the majority?
Yeah, a lot went into the thought, obviously. I firmly believe we could have won, and that wasn't the issue at all. I think we've done very well for the state of New Hampshire. It's kind of that diamond in the rough, if you will, up in the Northeast. It had to be right for me and my skill set. I'm a CEO. I'm a manager, first and foremost. And when it comes to having the ability to protect my state, design systems, implement new ideas, tackle mental health, tackle the opioid crisis, manage a good financial structure, get a surplus, that's what I do literally every day. You don't do that in Congress and the Senate. There's a lot of ideology, and they have the luxury of being ideologues, which is okay, and debating issues back and forth, and ultimately getting nothing done was unfortunately sometimes too acceptable. Maybe I was a little harsh in my words last fall. I didn't mean to be so overly critical, but I am critical of all of them, not of just Republicans, of all of them. I think all 100 senators, I've said it before, fire them all. I think that America is looking for accountability and deserves it. As a governor, I'm held to an accountability standard every single day. It's challenging, but it's also incredibly fulfilling. What we went through with COVID, we're still in COVID, by the way. We've managed right through it. We've done a phenomenal job in New Hampshire, but there's no doubt there'll be a winter surge coming, and we have to manage that and make sure it's there. All this federal money that's being released. Well, you put the wrong person in office as a governor, and the federal money is going to just bloat government. And I'm a small government efficiency guy. And so there's a responsibility of having good management with all the opportunity coming to the state to make sure those dollars are directed exactly where they need to be to lower tax burdens, not just in the long term, but with deferred maintenance issues and things you'd ultimately have to borrow or bond on. We're taking care of those issues now. One-time money, one-time spending. So there's just a lot undone that I'm very proud of what I've done for the past 5 or 6 years. But given where we are with the economy, inflation, COVID, a few other outlying issues, I rebuilt a whole opioid system, for example, to take care of issues of fentanyl and drug overdose. And I'm very proud. We're the only state in the country where overdose deaths haven't increased 2 years in a row, right? Overdose deaths across this country are up 60, 70%. We're actually down. So this new system has taken some young roots, which is good. But like anything, if you ignore it, you don't want it to wither on the vine. You got to give it a little more nurturing. Mental health, all new systems. We got to give it a little more nurturing. So to tell the state, thank you, goodbye, and good luck, I'm off to Washington, D.C. It wasn't right for the state. Certainly wasn't right for me, given I think where my skill set is. I don't have some of those skills and maybe some of the patience, if you will, of legislators. I like working with both sides of the aisle. I have no problem doing that because that's how you got to get stuff done. You get stuff done and then you run on those successes.
Kind of a follow-up there because you mentioned the patience. I've heard some people, you look back to the 2010 midterms, there were a whole bunch of folks who were right of center who said, you know what, I don't like the direction the country's going in. I've never been in government before, but I'm going to run for office. And people are saying you're getting a different crop of people in this cycle, even though it's going to look like it's going to be a good year for Republicans, in part because people look at the Senate and say, well, basically you vote on giant omnibus bills and judicial nominations, that it's not where you're crafting legislation dealing with all kinds of issues. Was that in your thinking? Like maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the job might have looked a little different?
Well, I think it did look different.
Yeah.
I think we all know that. It was very different 10 or 20 years ago. They got a lot more done. There was more working across the aisle when you have to. And that doesn't mean you give up your conservative principles. I consider myself a very rational conservative. I stand by those principles. I'm a fiscal hawk, if you will. I'm very pro-business and free market. I govern by that live free or die spirit that we have in New Hampshire. It really isn't just 4 words on our license plate, right? It's what really I think has made us very, very successful. Down here, it's just a little different. You can just get away with fighting strictly along those party lines. And look, I talk to individuals on both sides of the party. U.S. senators, and I'd say, well, why aren't you even trying to balance a budget? Like that's not balancing a budget is a completely foreign concept to me, and I can't think of anything more irresponsible, but they're not even trying. You talked about immigration reform when you had Republicans in the House and the Senate in 17 and 18 and a president, you did nothing. You talked about healthcare reform, you did nothing. You talked about all these things and did nothing. So you didn't meet the expectations of our party, of our Republican Party. So I was disappointed in that, and I thought, am I going to be coming down and be part of that? It doesn't mean they're useless and all of that. People kind of exaggerated a lot of my words, but there's an accountability and a standard that Americans expect, and I expect it just as a voter, right? Don't you? I mean, so I think we just need to push that envelope a little bit, and I can simply do more. I'm six. We call it the 603, right? That's our area code. I am 603 or bust, and I'm a zealot for my own state. I really am. I put New Hampshire first every single time. I love doing that. And I love challenging other states to meet the standards that we're setting. I can do that as a governor as opposed to a senator just debating policy. I mean, what does the Senate and Congress do? I mean, let's think about it. They vote up or down on a policy. Mm-hmm. They vote up or down on funding. Mm-hmm. And then they're done, right? I mean, what else? Then they go on to the next thing or they don't. But they don't design the system. They don't have to implement the dollars. They don't have to bring forth all the other ideas at the local level to make it a reality, to operationalize that at a local level. And governors do that, and so I love doing it. It's a challenge, but I love doing it. And that's where the fun is. And if I don't love the job, I mean, if someone doesn't love their job, are they really going to give 120% to it, right? I love my job. And I love knowing I give 120%. I think people know. They might disagree with me on issues. That's okay. But people know what I'm given every day because it is fulfilling.
Once you've been the executive, being one of 100 is probably a little bit harder too.
Yeah. How many times do you want the CEO to go to the board? Does the CEO want to become on the board of directors? Something like that.
I, for one, don't understand why you don't want to spend 6 years voting on confirmations and omnibus bills. I mean, that seems really, really exciting.
I'll simply say that was my brother was a U.S. senator and a congressman. Yeah, that was his, and he's as we say in New Hampshire, he's wicked smart. Right? Yeah. That guy's wicked smart, and he was great at it. He really was great at it, and he was super smart, and he was very good, and that was really his skill set, and he could get stuff done in a real conservative kind of that lowercase L libertarian way that a lot of us from New Hampshire have. And he held the line on a lot of things, and that was more his skill set. But I'm a little more of the CEO type.
But plus 2 Democrats, you're at 52. They can kill the filibuster. So Republicans making progress in this year's Senate elections is critical. Think of all the stuff that could have gotten done if they didn't have the split they have right now.
It's a great point. And part of my decision also was by the time November came around, when I made my decision last November, I got to the point where I firmly believe Sununu wasn't the 51st vote. I think we're going to have 53 seats next time. I think Hassan is going to lose even without me running against her. I think we have other candidates in the New Hampshire primary that are undoubtedly going to beat her. We have candidates that got into the race about 3 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. She's already spent $20 million. They're already beating her in polls come November, right? That's how built in and unpopular she is. And I don't mean that in a personal way, but she's just hasn't fulfilled the expectations of the voters in New Hampshire. And I think a lot of folks are going to see a lot of turnover, and Republicans are going to win that Senate back, whether Chris Sununu runs or not.
Seems like a good transition to the topic of the future of the Republican Party, or maybe the state of the Republican Party right now. We're getting into the heat of primary season in the 2022 midterms because arguably the presidential campaigns never really stop anymore. There's no shortage of 2024 speculation. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe months ago, at the Gridiron dinner, you made a very clear statement that former President Trump was bleeping crazy.
It was a clear joke, and it was a darn good joke, by the way. It was very funny.
How would you assess the psychological state of the former president?
Oh, come on. He's not crazy. Give me a break. Right. No, look, the Gridiron dinner got a lot of national attention. And again, what people feel, if you don't know the Gridiron, the Washington thing, it's like a 4-hour roast, right? And so I went up there. I made jokes about Joe Biden. I had Jen Psaki sitting right next to me. I made fun of her. I made fun of the Democrats. I made fun of myself. I called my father an old bastard. I made fun of the former president. That's what the Gridiron is. Okay. And so obviously, well, the Republican is says a joke about everyone is a little overly sensitive. Look, we have very serious jobs, but let's not take ourselves too seriously. Right. The job is a lot bigger than ourselves, and that's what the Gridiron is all about. And there's a lot of media there, and it gets all this attention, and I guess it was just a joke. But look, I'm not anti-Trump, right? I'm not anti-anything, but I am for moving forward, right? And so people say, well, what's going to happen in 24? And my message is very clear, and I mean it sincerely. If you're worried about 24, you're going to screw us up. If we don't seal the deal in 22, we're not going to have that momentum that we need to get to 24. And so our candidates need to win in November and close that deal. And we can't take that for granted, whether it's the Roe v. Wade issue that's coming up or other things the Democrats are going to throw. They're going to be organized and galvanized. I still personally think this inflation and the gas price issue is a real kitchen table issue, as it really is. It's hurting a lot of low-income and middle-income families. People are going to be angry on it, especially with an administration who I think just this week, Joe Biden said, our policies have helped inflation. And it's like America just gasped and said, oh, my God, you cannot actually believe that, right? So I think those are the kitchen table issues that are going to win it for us in 22. But we got to close that deal first. And then we can figure out who wants to run and what they're running on and what we're about. But when you talk about the state of the Republican Party, I think the media likes to say, is it the Trump, right? Because he's the hot button issue. And that's fine. That's a talking point. He's a former president. He has to be brought into the conversation. But at the end of the day, 22 is going to be won or lost on the candidates themselves, whether you're running for the House of Representatives, governor, or planning board. Candidates have to win it by talking to voters and convincing them that what they're bringing to the table, not who endorses them and who doesn't. That's what closes the deal in 22. And if we have the right candidates, and I think we do, I think we're going to be very successful.
I mean, like in some of these primaries, some of these candidates are very explicitly and loudly emphasizing that I am the Trump-endorsed candidate, places like Georgia, places like Pennsylvania. Is that healthy for the Republican Party? Do you like seeing that, or do you not like seeing that? And do you feel like running around with a Trump label will be good for Republicans, is bad for Republicans, or do you think it needs to be less?
I like the way you asked that question. Right. Is that healthy for the Republican? No. Okay. But look, I'm not a big believer in endorsements, right? Okay. I think at the end of the day, like I just said, voters have to look the candidate in the eye and say, are you going to help me and my family and go forward with a lot of the things that we want to see. No candidate is perfect. No one agrees with every candidate on 100%. My wife doesn't agree with me on 100% of things. Trust me, she the closest to us are the ones that challenge us the most. So you're never going to find the perfect candidate, but you have to find people that are real, right? You have to find people that are grounded in something. And so the media likes to play the are you Trump endorsed or not and all that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's about that. And I don't think our party ultimately is about that. It's a nice media talking point or social media shouting or whatever it is. But 80% of the party, I think 80% of America, is kind of in this middle zone, if you will. Not centrist by any means. They're strong Democrats, strong Republicans. But both parties have handed their microphones to the extremes, right? We've allowed the extremes to drive our message. I think the Democrats have allowed socialists to do it. I think Republicans have allowed these anti-government crazies to do it. And that's good news, right? The analogy I use is back in the 5th grade. You hear there's going to be a fight at 3 o'clock after school on the playground. Where is everybody at 3 o'clock? On the playground. They want to watch the fight, right? That's what sells tickets. So social media realized that really quick, and they said, well, we're going to emphasize the fight because that's what's going to sell and get people on our streams, and we're going to sell advertising. A little later on, more mainstream media, the CNNs and the Foxes and the MSNBC said, yeah, why are we being real journalists? This fight is what sells. So they got into the game. And unfortunately, from an American culture standpoint, that's not where most of us are. We just want somebody to bring us leadership and give fairness and opportunity to our family, right? We're not about the political fight. But unfortunately, that's where those microphones are right now. So I think over time, as we get further away from 2020, from an election standpoint, from a COVID standpoint, I think all this tends to peter out a little bit. And candidates in 24 on both the Republican and Democrat side are going to have to stand for who they are and what they're bringing to the table, not just who endorses them and where that is. I think it's a nice talking point now, but I don't think it defines us, and I don't think it's where we end up long term.
If the Republicans are going to do well in swing states and eventually in 2024, I think the Glenn Youngkin model is what you got to do. You got to make yourself appealing to the people who love Donald Trump, and you got to make yourself appealing to people besides that, because you have to cobble together 50% plus one at least to do that. So what's the smartest way to do that? For Youngkin, it was decent base conservative policies and then have a really good issue drop in your lap, like with the schools here. How do Republican candidates do that across the board?
Yeah, Glenn's terrific, by the way. And I'll say this, Governor Youngkin he's the real deal. He really is. I'm a big fan of that guy. He gets it in terms of he's not incendiary, right? It isn't about playing to the Trump base or anything like that. It's just about saying, look, I'm a rational conservative. Parents matter, right? Those two words, it defined what was going on in schools. But remember, it also defined a little bit of that, what I believe, that live, fear, die spirit. What it was really saying is you matter. You are an individual. You're an individual business. You're an individual person. You're an individual caring about your kid or your parents who can't get veterans benefit, whatever. You're an individual. And as a government, we're going to treat you as an individual, not from a big party platform. And that's what ultimately resonated with folks. Even folks that didn't have kids in school said, well, when he says parents matter, he means that we all matter, right? Not government systems matter. And the Democrats obviously, had a terrible candidate and put all their money in the other direction. But Glenn's a great governor in the real deal. And I think I can tell you most Republican governors, that's the way we govern, right? The individual has to come first. Why? Again, it goes back to that word of accountability. I have to go visit a school and talk to teachers and kids and parents every day, or visit a nursing home and talk about residents, whether they're getting the care they need, or visit a hospital, or visit a recovery center for opioid abuse, and talk to those people as individuals and listen. Well, the system was worked here and here, but it didn't work there, and there. And I say, okay, there's the barriers. And that's Glenn's approach. And that's what Republicans are really about. We're not about Trump, not Trump, or whatever, or this issue or that issue. Our issue, local government, minimal government control, minimal government infringement. Whether we like if you can oppose me on a philosophy, your business can oppose me, you can oppose me, but I'm not going to use government to penalize you for that, right? That's big government republicanism. That is not what we are about at all. That's kind of playing into the fight, if you will, as opposed to being hopeful and optimistic, trying to encourage other candidates to get on board. I was out in California talking to the state Republican meeting, and I was talking to them all about how to inspire the next generation of Republican candidates to rise up. What issues are important to them? Environmental issues are important to the next generation of Republicans. There's no doubt about that. All the polling shows that. And so it doesn't mean we have to be climate change alarmists, right? It just means you have to understand and bring a rational approach to, transition out of fossil fuels over time, so we're not rocking the energy markets and things like that, understanding that there's a place for new renewable energy. Maybe Arizona's pretty good for solar. New Hampshire, maybe we're covered in snow 6 months. So let's have a smarter approach. Offshore wind, that's good for New Hampshire, but maybe not necessarily the best for other parts of the country. So, inspiring people on their issues to hopefully know that they can step up and not be part of just a political fight. It's not, I don't live in that political fight. People think we do, but I don't. I say very positive all day. I don't watch cable TV. I really don't. I mean, I do a lot of social media posts, all positive. I don't engage in the comments and all that kind of nonsense because I think there's a responsibility in leadership to be hopeful and optimistic because I need my B team and my C team coming after me, right? We need to build the bench. And that's a responsibility of leadership, is inspiring that bench to step up.
A lot more conversation to come with Governor Sununu in just a moment. But first, I got to tell you about the fantastic new deal from Omaha Steaks. Spring is here, so let Omaha Steaks make it real easy to stock up on all your grilling favorites. I love their products, the filet mignons especially, but the burgers are phenomenal too. They've got fantastic hot dogs, chicken, so much, and it's all great, especially off the grill. So visit omahasteaks.com and enter Martini into the search bar and order that spring grill pack today. You'll save over 50%, plus you'll get 4 free Omaha steak burgers and 4 chicken breasts also free with your order. This package has it all, from the butcher-cut filet mignons to the delicious caramel apple tartlets, and you can substitute different items so your package has exactly what you want. Omaha Steaks delivers perfection in every single bite, every single time, and if they don't, although they will, you can get 100% of your money back or a replacement box. Visit omahasteaks.com, type the keyword Martini in the search bar, and order today. One more time, visit omahasteaks.com, use the keyword Martini, and order the spring grill pack today. Don't forget, you'll get 4 Omaha Steak burgers and 4 chicken breasts for free. That's omahasteaks.com, keyword Martini. Governor, let's move on to the midterms. It's supposed to be a good year for Republicans.
We'll leave it to Republicans to blow it if we're not disciplined, right? We
got said it before we could. Yeah.
so you know, but I don't know whether you feel more comfortable with Bill Clinton feeling your pain or Joe Biden tasting your frustration, which he said about inflation yesterday. A lot of issues. Obviously, inflation's a big one. General competence, I think, ever since Afghanistan, that's been a big issue. Crime is certainly one in some parts of the country. Opioids, like you talked about, is a big one in New Hampshire, and a lot of parts of the country that the media simply won't give a lot of oxygen to, even though record number of overdose deaths last year. The border, you're a border state, different border than the one that gets most of the attention. What are the issues that matter most in your state this year, and which ones do you think will matter the most across the country?
It's inflation, right? I mean, the reality is we just saw a report about 30 minutes come out that inflation is, again, higher than anticipated. April was 8.3%. That was more aggressive than the market was hoping for. That's a reality. And so this soft landing, we're going to we all want a soft landing on the recession, but there's probably some form of recession coming. We remember this Biden administration has authorized all this money to be spent. This infrastructure money, not a penny has been spent yet. Not a penny has been spent. It's all been authorized, but there's no dollars actually out the door. Wait till that starts happening. And then we're going to have an issues with steel, with oil even further, because you need oil to make asphalt, right? Mm-hmm. With raw materials, cement and concrete. The cost of cement has gone up 3 or 4 times. I watch this stuff every day because as a small state, we're always trying to pool together our buying power so that we can compete with the big guys, so to say. So by watching what's happening in these kind of commodity material markets, not just supply chain issues, but that one is obvious as well. We're still going to feel these inflationary pressures, especially around gas and diesel for a long time. Truckers, just getting the product from Bentonville, Arkansas, right, at Walmart to your Walmart, let's say in New Hampshire, whatever it might be. I mean, that cost that trucker another $1,500 just in the price increase that happened last week, right? 2 weeks ago. Now, 2 weeks later, he's spending $1,500 more just to transport that product. I mean, that's going to bring supply chain to a halt. And the Biden administration's unwillingness to own any of this. And if anything, his statement yesterday that, my policies have improved the inflation. I was baffled by it. So this is a real issue. Inflation is the worst tax on the poor you could possibly give in the middle class. And they're feeling it, and they're frustrated. And if you think they're frustrated today, wait till November. So I think that's a real issue. That's why Republicans are going to win, because we talk about being fiscally conservative as a party. But are we? I'm very proud to be a very strong fiscal conservative. I was ranked the most fiscally responsible governor in the country. Thank you for patting me on the back. Let me just pat my arms. My hands are 2 inches longer now for patting myself on the back all the time. But really, I take that very responsibly, right? We need to see that out of Washington. I want to see a balance, but Governor, it's just not that simple. I get it's not simple. It's hard in New Hampshire too, but we do it every other year. We balance that budget. We manage our debt. We make sure that other people's money, which I have been charged with the responsibility of managing, that is the utmost responsibility I carry. I take that from the private sector. I was an engineer for a long time. And then I ran a ski resort. And I had to make sure that our team got paid every week in managing cash flow and payroll. And I had shareholders that had invested with me, and they believed in me. And I used to try to go to sleep with ulcers and headaches because the managing other people's money is a monstrous responsibility. And I carry that with me as governor. I wish Washington would do that. 30 trillion is a real number. It's not some fantasy land thing. It is a real number. We owe that money back. And so we have to have some long-term strategy, short-term as well, but at least a long-term game plan to say, you've invested in us, you believed in us, you voted for us, and one of the foremost responsibilities of managing your money, we're just going to keep ignoring it. Social Security, like that thing is going to go bankrupt. Medicare, it's going to go bankrupt unless we put in real reforms. Republicans have the responsibility of not just managing short-term inflation, which we can do with good management, but we do have the responsibility of managing the long-term economic stability of this country. I'm not seeing it right now. I think a lot of folks aren't. So I just want to say, don't take that for granted. Demand that accountability out of the Republicans that you elect in November.
Best case scenario for Republicans. They have a great year in the House, great year in the Senate. Obviously, you're probably a little more focused on gubernatorial races and things like that at the RGA. But ideally, what would Republicans be doing starting in January 2023, particularly to address the problems of inflation?
On a national level?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. I mean, if you're just going to pass bills that the president is going to veto, you're not going to get anywhere. We need to start doing what we do the worst, messaging the right way, public pressure to change some of these policies that have gone into place to drive where we need to go. It doesn't mean all fossil fuels all the time necessarily, but it means you need to have a transitional plan. The realities of COVID are there. You need to control how the dollars are spent. You need to make sure that it's being managed at the right level. We can't go back necessarily and just get rid of all the extra money that Washington has spent, but you need to be smart going forward. And let me tell you, if you balanced a budget, it's going to hurt. It's going to be a little bit painful. But the markets would also respond and say, okay, there's a long-term strategy here for America. We're not going to put ourselves on the brink. If we always plan to balance our budget, well, we just need to stay a little bit ahead of GDP. That's just not going to happen. You're going to have ebbs and flows there, and ultimately it weakens ourselves on a national scale. So I think having the right messaging and a right long-term strategy and tackling these big issues that some Republicans in Washington, frankly, are just too afraid to tackle, but they don't understand that by tackling them, they'll be thanked. Because America isn't dumb. Our voters aren't dumb. They get it. They get absolutely what's happening, and they're scared about what's happening on a national level. They've lost a lot of faith, right? Look at all those polls. You have the direction of the country, faith in Congress. Those are always like sub 30, approval numbers. So people know what's going on. They're not being duped. But as Republicans, if we live to the expectations and the responsibility that we claim to in the campaigns, I think we'll be, quote unquote, rewarded by that. And I think America would be a lot better off.
Let's talk about a couple of specific issues. I know Jim's got at least one that he wants to bring to your attention as well. We talked about it a couple of times in passing now, and that's education. What parents saw as a result of the pandemic and what their kids were seeing, the curriculum fights, not only here in Virginia, but beyond, this has become a front and center issue. And for the first time in my conscious memory, it's an issue where the Republicans actually seem to be in a position to benefit from the issue. I know you graduated high school from Thomas Jefferson Science and Tech and then went to MIT. So I'm sorry you didn't have better educational opportunities in life. But you've been working on this issue. School choice, I think, is a rock solid winner for Republicans.
Huge.
And every time it's emphasized, it goes well. What you've done not only focuses on school choice, but you have moved in the direction of vouchers as well. So explain what you think is, I don't know if there's a universal approach to this state by state, but what wins and what resonates with parents and what gets results.
So let's talk about how to win the issue. 40 years, New Hampshire's been talking about some form of school choice. We got it done. And we got it done in the right way. We didn't, for a long time, we tried to go for all or nothing, right? As opposed to, complete voucher system, and that would never pass for a variety of different reasons. So we took more of a stepwise approach. We said, okay, we're going to make sure that all the state dollars that go into a child's education, and it's about a third, maybe 40% of the money comes from the state. If you are at 300% of the federal poverty level or below, right? So for the middle and lower income students, you can take the state money and do whatever you want with it. And my strategy there was very simple. I knew it was going to be successful. I knew we were going to open up doors of opportunity for families that had never even been offered that kind of opportunity. And we thought a few hundred people would take advantage. I think like 1,500, something like that, have taken advantage of the program within the first year. We're not even a year into it. So it's going like wildfire, which is great. And then they go out and say, well, we need to do more of this, right? And let them spread the message, neighbor to neighbor, school to school. It's not shutting down schools. It's not taking any money out of public education. None of those myths that the Democrats throw at you are true. So sometimes by taking a stepwise approach, you get the first win and it builds on itself. And then, by the way, it isn't just a bunch of politicians say, trust us, it will work. It's inner city families and lower income families saying, this is an amazing program. And holy, I never thought my kids would get this kind of opportunity for homeschooling or a private school or a parochial school, whatever it is, right? So, because that's up to you. My job as governor is not to solve your problems. It's not. My job is to create doors of opportunity. As many doors of opportunity as possible, and then you do you. You decide what door you or your business want to walk through, whether you're a hardcore liberal or a hardcore conservative. I don't care about your politics. I just want to set up those doors of opportunity, and I guarantee you when we do that as Republicans, we become smaller government, we become much more efficient, we empower the individuals, and everything rises from that, right? It's really a rising tide. So the foundation of school choice opens up so many doors. That's why Glenn won. You know, it wasn't just on a school choice issue, it was more on the Parents Matter issue. But what we're doing in New Hampshire has just been phenomenal. And again, we'll let that kind of mature for a year or two, and then maybe we'll take another step. We'll look at the data. Maybe it worked here. Maybe we had good opportunity in rural areas. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we had good opportunities in the inner cities. Maybe we didn't. So we can address those barriers to make it better. You don't just, oh, we got it done, rest on the laurels, walk away, right? You want to challenge yourself to make it better. Just because a family has $5,000 or $6,000 in their pocket to use any way they want, do they have enough opportunities in their region to do that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We can explore, keep exploring that, seeing where the demand curve is on it. But you got to constantly look at the data and challenge yourself to keep tweaking the system and making it better.
Makes everybody better. Everybody better.
Sure. Probably the less pleasant section of the interview here, Governor. The Alito draft got leaked, and you pretty quickly put out a statement saying, quote, as a pro-choice governor, I am committed to upholding Roe v. Wade, which is why I'm proud of the bipartisan bill headed to my desk this year that expands access. So long that I am governor, these healthcare services for women will remain safe and legal. People like me ground our teeth upon reading that. But you've also got a lot of grief from pro-choice Democrats who argue that the legislation you signed that went into effect January 1st this year deemed post-24-week abortions illegal except in cases of a medical emergency. As a governor, you don't have perfect control over what the law is. You can only sign or veto legislation that's sent to you. But if the legislature said, Governor, we're going to let you have whatever you want on this issue, what should your state's abortion laws be? Well,
look, I'm the first governor in 40 years to sign an abortion ban. Right, Republican governors before me never signed that. I've done more on the pro-life issue than if you will, than anyone. And I believe, as most Americans do, that there should be a ban on abortions in months 7, 8, and 9. And we got that done. And that was a 40-year challenge, and we actually did it. Again, most ultimately, regardless of where the judgment comes out of Roe v. Wade, states are going to have to make their decisions. Some states will go for complete bans, and we'll see what the political ramifications of that are. Most states will be exactly where New Hampshire is, as we are now, with something in the middle. Is it 15 weeks or 24 weeks or 20? Whatever it is, viability. Everyone can define it a different way. So ultimately, this is going to play out kind of being New Hampshire being right where we are now. We're in line with 44 other states. We'll probably remain in line with 44 other states. And that's, for me, that's the right place to be. We have some options for individuals early on in that process. But a full ban on it, I just think my sense is very few states are actually going to ultimately go that way.
In light of your beliefs being not easily putting into a, one label of pro-choice, one label of pro-life, it's pretty clear you're heavily favored for re-election, but Democrats are going to attack you as as being anti-abortion.
Democrats will say I'm too pro-life. Extreme folks on the extreme right will say I'm too pro-choice. This is New Hampshire. We're an in-the-middle state on this issue. I don't mean to say I'm in the middle, but I believe in a reasonable ban to be put in place. We did that, but that's where we are.
Have you gotten any pushback from fellow Republicans over the statement you put out?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But look, I don't really look at the polls on the issue. This is where I am on the issue. I think the ban that came into place last year, it had all these kind of really, really aggressive provisions that were completely unreasonable. No other state had them. So that's why, I worked hard to kind of pull back on that because it didn't make logical sense to have that kind of stuff in there. a ban on the late-term abortions, as most states have, is exactly where we need to be. You're going to have pro-life. I think to your definition of pro-life and pro-choice, we'll see where those definitions go, right? Because is it an all or nothing game now? Is it as black and white as it has always been deemed to be? I don't think so. In fact, I know it's not going to be because that backstop of Roe v. Wade may not be there in the future. And states will just have to decide, is it 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 24 weeks, whatever it is. So most states are going to allow, even Republican states, red states are going to, my sense is going to allow some form of choice in there.
All right, as we get ready to wrap this up here, Governor, Jim and I have a running frustration with the lovely state of Iowa. Not only because they always get to go first in the presidential caucuses.
They don't go first. They don't go
They're
first.
the first in the nation caucus. You're the first in the nation
a what?
primary.
A caucus?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what a caucus is, by the way?
It's a totally convoluted process.
Apparently neither can Iowans tell you what a caucus is. It doesn't involve counting votes, apparently.
That's called batting practice. Okay, the game hasn't really started yet till New Hampshire comes into play. We're the first inning.
So nonetheless, over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the fact that the DNC is thinking about moving on from Iowa as the starting point. And Jim and I were generally favorable on that because if you're going to go first or go at all, you should probably at least be able to determine who won, which the Democrats have not been able to do for the past two cycles. Republicans couldn't find a winner in 2012. And so we're okay with that. We do like the idea of smaller states going first so candidates have the opportunity for retail politics and build their name if they're not well bankrolled in the beginning. The question is whether the same states should always get to go first or whether the smaller states ought to rotate. So as the questions over Iowa come up, the questions I'm sure will come up over New Hampshire. So why should New Hampshire keep that spot cycle after cycle?
Yeah, we don't deserve the first in the nation primary because it's a tradition. We deserve it because we've earned it over everybody else. We have the highest voter turnout. We have the highest poll numbers in terms of integrity of our elections. We have the ability to really force the retail politics. And we have a history where it doesn't matter, to your point, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter about your name ID. You got to earn it. Person to person, individual to individual, which is what the Republican Party is really all about. So it's not about a tradition at all. I mean, if someone can match our numbers in terms of, that voter turnout, integrity election, and the ability to get your name out there in a way that you just can't do in really any other state. I would challenge you to find any other state that gets the results and the data that we have. And we take that very seriously.
Governor, with all due respect, isn't some of that high turnout because New Hampshire goes second? And that if, say, Virginia or any other state was going that early in the primary, by the time it gets to us, usually it's down to 2 or 3 candidates. Whereas in New Hampshire, it's 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates.
No, because we have high voter turnout, not just in the first in the nation primary. We have very high voter turnout in our normal primaries in September, in our general election. We always have some of the highest voter turnout and voter engagement because, and the reason is this, we are such a locally controlled state, right? So much of what happens in terms of politics happens with the planning boards and the school boards and the town councils and the city councils, and everyone's involved in that. And a 400-member legislature that's effectively a volunteer legislature. I mean, if you're not running for office in New Hampshire, you're probably related or your next door neighbor is, right? We're very engaged in our process, unlike anywhere else. So we have these fundamentals that are built into New Hampshire that you're never going to find in another state that allow and really force a retail politics that you don't find. Look, people come up to New Hampshire and their minds are blown. In those final weeks of the first in the nation primary, their minds they can't believe what's happening. And it really is like our fifth professional sport. Candidates going corner to corner, bookstore to bookstore, doing anything they can just to shake a hand. We don't give a lot of money in New Hampshire. It's really hard to raise money in New Hampshire because we would never pay to have a presidential candidate come and sit in our living room. They have to earn the right to come sit in our living room with my friends. There's a running joke, but it's very serious. Gee, you going to vote for Joe Biden this year? How do I know? I've only met him twice, right? But that's the way. That's the mentality up there. I got to meet you a couple times. I got to look you in the eye, Republican and Democrat, and earn it. And you're never going to get that in Virginia. You're just not. It's going to be about big money and all that kind of stuff and big advertising and frankly anything. Whatever you do with the first in the nation primary, it's obviously got to stay in New Hampshire. But God, keep it away from Washington. That's the worst thing you could possibly do.
So when there were 15, 16 Republicans running in 2016 and a couple dozen Democrats, in reality, are these guys like 50 yards apart as they're campaigning?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. No joke. Yeah, no, Chris Christie is doing a town hall, and he was doing a town hall in Chester. I think it was in Chester. And then walking up about 200 yards away over by the town cannons and the crossroads was Scott? I think it might have been Walker was walking or something like that. Was walking up. I forget who it was, but man, it was great. And he's shaking hands, and Christie's doing his thing, and then the Democrats will come in. It's a free for all. And again, it's not about personal attacks. It's not about big money. There's a little advertising, of course. Usually, the candidates that try to spend the strongest dollar, we smell right through that. Right? That it's like, oh, don't do that. We see it coming. The candidate that is earliest at Dunkin' Donuts, yeah, we'll notice you there as opposed to the Starbucks guys. No offense to Starbucks out there, but we like our down home local stuff, and we do take notice. Not that you have to just agree with everything we're about, but you got to be real. If you ain't real, we're going to smell it a mile away.
So you are in Washington today, or I imagine, into the nation's capital. You mentioned speaking to the California.
It's lovely. It's just lovely here. I mean that with all sincerity. I'm a politician. I would never lie.
It's relatively pleasant today. You see, obviously, you're running for re-election. Clearly, you said you're not interested in being a senator, but there are other executive jobs in our government, and so the question is: look, obviously, you're not interested in running anytime soon. But do you ever look at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office and say, that's like a nice place to work?
I don't look at no. Look, I'm definitely focused on 22. A lot of people are talking. There's no doubt. I mean that's just the way it is. I'm not really focused on that. We'll get there after 22. We'll see what happens and where things are. And again, if my skill set fits, and I think it does. Look, I'll say this, whoever becomes the next president, I'm a firm believer it needs to be a governor. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a governor. You need executive decision-making, buck stops here type experience as opposed to this legislative gray area in ideology. You need to have someone who understands accountability, hopefully someone who's had a job in the private sector and struggled and understand what people go through on the paycheck side. Governors, or at least the Republican governors, they all have that. They all have great experience there. And I think almost all of them would make phenomenal presidents. And I believe that sincerely. So hopefully a couple governors will get up and they'll run. And, we'll see where all that goes. But, folks have asked me. But, nothing I'm thinking about right now.
Well, every 2 years is the governor's race in New Hampshire.
Every 2 years. Look, I'm going for my fourth term. I'm the only fourth. Me and Phil Scott in Vermont will be the only 4-term governors. And no governor's gone beyond that because it's really hard getting elected. Personally, it's a struggle. It doesn't matter how popular you are. Going through 4 campaigns in effectively 7 years, it wears on you. It wears on the family. It wears on the public toll and all that. But we are in a pretty tough time right now, and I still can give as long as I can keep giving 120%. I'm going to do it, and that's where my focus is, and we'll see what happens.
Well, Governor, we thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your obvious endorsement of the 3 Martini Lunch podcast by appearing with us.
Other than the fact that I'm waiting for the martini, I don't 3 cups of water, but it'll do.
You're learning in person the secret of the 3 Martini.
I run New Hampshire runs all their liquor stores on the highway, right? So technically, I'm the CEO of one of the largest liquor store retail systems in the country. I will send you a few martinis down here because just in case, just so you have some on hand for your next guest.
Hey, free stuff will always work with us, so thank you. Thank you. Governor Chris Sununu on the 3 Martini Lunch.
Thank you, guys.
So, Jim, we covered a lot of ground there. We went everywhere we wanted to go, and he took us some places we weren't even expecting to go. So I got to say, I thought he was pretty open. We didn't agree on everything, but in the end, I thought we got a lot out of him.
I was going to say, I think he had, at minimum, well-defended, if not terrific answers on almost every question. And what he said about keeping New Hampshire as the first primary in the nation, I think that'll be a very popular answer in New Hampshire and not so popular in about 49 other states. But no, obviously this is a prepared, it's easy to see why he's, in his 3rd term and looking good for his 4th. Probably the kind of Republican leadership you'd like to see in a lot of places in this country. And interested on that last question, he obviously, look, I think there's an old saying, every senator looks in the mirror and sees a president looking back. I don't think governors are that different. And, when you're in Washington meeting with, as you mentioned, going to the State Department later today, speaking to state parties across the country, that's planting the seeds for something down the road, I strongly suspect, or at least keeping your options open for something down the road.
Yeah, we don't know everything that's on the schedule, but and usually small state governors might have a disadvantage. New Hampshire, given its position,
he'd be in a pretty good spot for that primary. Yeah,
Yeah, the number of candidates coming. It's like the time Tom Harkin ran for president in Iowa, nobody else went, and all the retailers are like, hey, "Come on, man, what are you doing?"
Yeah, by the way, New Hampshire folks might not like that. That's actually one of the great ironies. Is that all of a sudden you become, well, he's going to win that state, so nobody cares, and that's could really hurt the New Hampshire economy. Don't run for president. That's the.
The last New England governor that was prominent was Howard Dean running for governor. I think Chris Sununu would be a significant improvement.
Calmer, later, less yelly. Yeah.
The most disturbing thing, I think, of our interaction with Governor Sununu today was actually as he left the studio, what did he call himself? A Tom Brady aficionado? Or what did he say?
Yes, he was saying he tries to follow the Tom Brady TB12 health. And he said he was talking about running this morning and how, when you're running for re-election, you're doing a lot of events, you're going from place to place and stuff. Listeners, I was very laid back. You should know. I did not lunge at him. I did not have any traumatic flashbacks or anything. I did not try to Mo Lewis him or anything like that. No, he's and obviously the interesting thing is I said, so that means you must root for Tampa Bay. And he said yes. So, I'm just going to get him in trouble with Patriots fans, but Patriots fans, you deserve that betrayal. And I actually, strongly suspect enormous number of the New England Patriot fans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers became their second favorite team almost overnight a couple of years ago.
Bucks are probably his NFC team at this point. I would imagine he's still got a little bit of Patriots gear. But by the way, Mo Lewis is how we got Tom Brady.
Yes.
So we don't.
But Mo Lewis should have done that to Tom Brady, and then whoever's third in the list would have been the next superstar, of the generation.
Oh man, so great! Like we've always said over the past several months, when a really good opportunity presents itself to have a guest here on the Three Martini Lunch, we're going to take it, and we think that was a good thing to do today. And if it happens again, we'll do it again. But the usual fare remains the usual fare.
Indeed. And just for all the PR flacks who keep pitching, well, now that you have guests on your podcast, look, don't call us. We'll call you.
That's exactly right. We're very select, very select. All right, Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thank you so much for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Also, remember, you can get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. And have a great Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
This week on the Federalist Radio Hour. The left would, of course, counter and say, well, listen, the sort of political establishment swindled everyone into paying these really high rates. So, in fact, it's just to sort of forgive this illegitimate debt to begin with. But, you're sort of stripping people of their own agency and decision-making powers in order to make that argument. I'm Emily Jashinsky of The Federalist. Subscribe to The Federalist on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.